Hello, welcome to this video, and this video is a new idea for the channel. I had this idea last week. I thought this is a brilliant idea. I've got to try it out, and I hope this works. So I would love to do more of these. So hopefully it's brought all the prog fans to the here, all the idle retentive prog fans that want to see how deep their knowledge is of prog. You know, because the thing about progressive rock fans, they can't just like the music, they have to know about it. You know, they have to know when things were recorded and who was doing this and what was in, you know, when was this album made and why was it made. And they have to know all these facts, which is why they like to come in here and listen to me spew these facts. So what I'm going to be doing today is episode 1, hopefully, of the Big Prog Quiz. And this will be a moment to see how much you really know about progressive rock. So this is how this video works. It's very straightforward. You need to go and get a pen and paper right now. So stop the video now and go and get yourself a pen and paper. Right, so if you got yourself a pen and paper, lovely. I am going to ask you 20 questions about prog. They are going to centre around classic prog, I'm afraid, because I think that was the best way to start this. I may do a quiz later on about more modern prog, but this is on the whole about old school 70s classic prog. And most of you will be going, good, because that's the stuff I know about. And I'm going to ask 20 questions. You write the answers down, and then I will go through the answers and you score yourself. And what you have to do is you have to honestly do it. You can't Google it. You have to put your score in the comments. And we're going to see which one of you lot, right, is king of prog knowledge. Now, I sometimes sit and chat to my patrons. You know, we chat all the time. If you want to come have a chat to me, you know, then, you know, every couple of weeks we have the big patron meeting and I do it on Zoom. We record it. You can go and watch them. They're very fun. My patrons know way more than me about prog, right? So I expect my patrons to do very well. But I'm sure there's some people out there that really, they know their stuff. Now, this quiz is hard. I think it's hard. There's no easy questions here. It's not like they're one of those things, you know, when you're on Facebook and it says, you know, what's your knowledge about rock music? You are an expert if you could ask 20 of these questions. And then it comes on, it says, who was the guitarist of Led Zeppelin, and gives you 4 choices. This is way beyond that. This is hard, right? You know, I went to a photo shoot yesterday with the great British prog bass player John Jowett, and I told him about this, and he said, oh, and I told him some of the questions. He did get 1 or 2, but he didn't get them all. So if John can't get them, this is hard. This is hard. So are you ready? Have you got your pen and paper ready? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the 20 questions, and then I'm going to go through the answers, and then that's it. That's the video. That's it. You're going to learn 20 facts if you can't answer it, and if you can answer them all, you are going to be king prog knowledge. Right? So, are you sitting comfortably? Let the quiz begin. Question 1. Tony Kaye and Rick Wakeman also played keyboards for which famous music act apart from Yes? Once I answer the question, I will go to this pose here, and this will give you time to write the answer down. So here, all these answers are just a name, or you don't have to write sentences, so it should be quite easy. So, have you all got that written down? So, I don't know. Who could that be? Think about it. Think about it. Right. Question 2. What item of clothing was used to emulate the flapping wings on the Camel album Snow Goose? What item of clothing was used to emulate the flapping wings on the Camel album Snow Goose? There's a ton of Camel fans out there. It's easy for them. Question 3. Gentle Giant started out as a psychedelic pop band. What was that band's name? Gentle Giant. They started out as a psychedelic pop band. What was that band's name? I think that hit record. Got it down? You alright? We don't need to catch up. I will run through all these again and when we get to the end, just in case you miss one. Number 4. Which progressive rock musician produced the album Shamal by Gong? Which progressive rock musician could that be? Shamal. Great album. Question 5. Following on from the album Shamal, which non-prog band originated as a backing band for Mike Howlett, the singer and bass player of Gong? If you know your prog, it's easy. Question 6. I mean, really enjoy this. It's so easy. I don't have to think. I'm just reading the list out. Question 6. Elton John took his first name from which progressive rock musician? Obviously, you've got the first name, haven't you? Oh, mate, they may have taken his first name from their surname. I don't know. Well, I do know because I can see the answer. Right, number 7. This is a bit easier one, so that, you know, the ones that you're struggling, you should be able to get this one. This is a little bit easier. So, number 7, Chester Thompson, touring drummer with Genesis, previously played with which music artist? Write it down now. Have you got it there? Number 8. Peter Hamill, Robert Fripp and Steve Hillage, and I believe, it's not down there, I believe Nick Turner from Hawkwind as well, all played with which British punk band? Yes, got punking on the quiz, which I like. Where are we? Right. Number 9. On the cover of the Yes album, which band member has his leg in a cast? In other words, which one's got a broken leg on the cover of the Yes album? Don't go looking. Write it down, as Jaco Pastorius used to say. Right, oh, I forgot to do that. Did I forget that? Right, so, number 10. The 2017 film Baby Driver features which prog rock classic on its soundtrack? And it's an incredible scene if you haven't seen it of prog. Oh, I won't talk about it. We'll go back. We'll talk about it later on. So I'll read that out again. In 2017, in the 2017 film Baby Driver, which prog rock classic is featured on the soundtrack of that film? Question 11. Black Sabbath guitarist Tony Iommi spent 3 weeks as the guitarist of which British progressive rock band? He did, you know. And there's film evidence of it as well. Write it down. Get that answer down. Number 12. Before joining Yes, Bill Bruford was the member of which British blues band and was fired after only 3 gigs? Oh, that's a hard one, isn't it? That's a really hard one. He must have been about 20 at the time. Number 13. Which controversial writer and thinker was the inspiration for the songs 2112 and Anthem by Rush? Question 14. The album L by Steve Hillage features which US prog band? Great album. Question 15. The British player... Question 15. The British snooker player Steve Davis is... Well, he's not a snooker player anymore. I think he's retired. He must still play. But the British snooker player Steve Davis is a member of which prog electronic trio? Question 16. Which groundbreaking female singer featured on Bill Bruford's album Feels Good to Me? What could it be? Question 17. Now this one has got, there's more than one answer. You only have to get one of these answers, okay? But you got a choice here. But most people who know this fact will know the one, but I'm just whittering on now. So I just ask the question. Number 17, question 17. Name a progressive rock band that supported the Rolling Stones on their concert in Hyde Park in 1969. Wasn't that many progressive rock bands around in 1969. Don't give me a clue, Andy. Right. Question 18. The British actor David Hemmings narrates the story on which Rick Wakeman album? Right. Number 19, slightly easier, so you prog fans should at least get a couple of points if these are hard questions. Question 19. The album Left Overture by Kansas yielded which hit single? And the last question. Question 20. The Nazi dagger that Keith Emerson stabbed his organ with was given to him by a roadie of his band, The Nice. Who was that roadie? So there we have, write it down. I'll give you a chance to write it down. There we have my first big quiz. I'm going to be doing this on all the music styles. I'm going to do it on heavy metal. I'm going to do it on jazz. I'm going to do it on fusion. But we start with prog because we always start with prog on this channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the answers now, and I want you to tick whether you got the answers right. I don't want any cheating, and then we'll tot it up, and I want you to put your score in the comments out of 20. And hopefully if you enjoyed this, I will do more, because I'm sure the prog fans are going to like doing this. And if you get 20 out of 20, I will do so. I don't know what I'll do. I might mention you on the channel on the next one. You'll get a mention here, you know, and if you put something nice and funny in the comments, I will say it. So let's go back to question 1. So the question 1 was Tony Kaye and Rick Wakeman also played keyboards for which famous music act apart from Yes? And the answer is David Bowie. So Rick Wakeman played on a number of David Bowie songs, Life on Mars and stuff like that, played piano on them. When Rick Wakeman returned to Yes in 1977 and went out on tour, he was playing keyboard parts by Tony Kaye, obviously. But what's interesting is that Tony Kaye in 1977 was also on tour with David Bowie playing parts created by Rick Wakeman. Who'd have thought it? So the answer for number 1 is David Bowie. Give yourself a tick and a point if you got that right. Question 2. What item of clothing was used to emulate the flapping wings on the Camel album Snow Goose? This is a hard one, but it's pretty obvious. What is the uniform of the progressive rock music fan? What would it be? It's quite obvious. It can only be one thing, and it is, of course, a duffel coat. You know, one of the great British items of clothing. Completely uncool, but very useful. And useful in many ways, and one of the ways it's useful is it can emulate the flapping wings of a goose, as discovered by the musicians Camel on their album The Snow Goose. So if you've got duffel coat, give yourself a big tick. Number 3, question 3. Gentle Giant started out as a psychedelic pop band. What was its name? Its name was Simon Dupree and the Big Sound, and I think they had a hit record with a song called Kites, I think. So if you got Simon Dupree and the Big Sound, or even you just put Simon Dupree, if you just put Simon Dupree, I will allow that and you can get a tick for that answer. Great, let's move on. Question 4. Which prog rock musician produced the album Shamal by Gong? And it is Nick Mason, the drummer with Pink Floyd. And anybody who says they're not a prog rock band and he's not a prog rock musician, Leave the class now. Go and stand in the corner. My class, my rules. Right, number 5, question 5. Which non-prog band originated as a backing band for Mike Howlett of Gong? And it is, of course, easy one, I think. It was the Police, wasn't it? So the Police started out as a sort of punk band, although Stuart Copeland had been playing drums with Curved Air, the great progressive rock band. Sting was in a jazz fusion unit in Newcastle called Last Exit. And you had this guy called Hendy Paderewski or something on guitar, who wasn't a great guitar player. Andy Summers had played with Kevin Ayers, he'd played with the Soft Machine guys. He was a product of progressive rock, and he was pulled in to play guitar with Sting and Stuart Copeland. And Sting had a whole bunch of songs that were really coming much more out of, I suppose, jazz and fusion and prog, harder chord progressions, harder parts. And with Andy Summers, he saw somebody who could take those parts and develop them, you know. And so on that tour, when they finished, they get back and Sting thinks, I really want that guy in the band. So he asked Andy Summers to join, but Andy Summers said, I'll only join if you get rid of Henry Paderewski, whatever his name is. So they sacked that guy off, and he becomes the greater loser in the story of the Police, and Andy Summers joins, and at that point the band just skyrockets, and the rest is history. They become one of the biggest bands in history, all because of little Mike Howlett from Gong. Question 6. Elton John took his first name from which progressive rock musician? And it is the saxophone player Elton Dean from Soft Machine. And why did he do that? Because before he was a solo artist, he was playing in a band called, I think, Blues Incorporated, which featured Long John Baldry on vocals, and it featured Elton Dean on sax. And he took Long John Baldry's name and Elton Dean's name and put them together, and he got Elton John. Another thing that's interesting about Elton John is that he was considered by Gentle Giant as a keyboard player in the early days when they went from Simon Dupree to Gentle Giant, I think, which is a testament to what a monster keyboard player, pianist he must be. And there you'll see that there are very subtle links between these questions. And the reason is it's not deliberate, but the conceptual continuity that you see is because as I was coming up with them, I would sort of spin off from the question before. So anyway, we will move on. Question 7. Chester Thompson, touring drummer with Genesis, previously played with which artist? Of course, it's Frank Zappa. And he played with Frank Zappa alongside Ralph Humphrey. He plays on Roxy Music and elsewhere, and he is the sole drummer on One Size Fits All, which could well be the greatest Frank Zappa album. He then goes in and plays with Weather Report for a certain time, and if you put Weather Report, you will also get a point because they're both right. And then he was pulled in after Phil Collins heard his drum duet stuff on Roxy and Elsewhere with Ralph Humphrey. So, if you want to know more about that, I have an interview with the late great Ralph Humphrey that I recorded last March, and then Ralph sadly died in April. And he talks about this stuff, and there's also an interview that we did that's over on Greg Bendian's channel, where he really discusses that double drum thing he had with Chester Thompson. It's very interesting. Number 8, Peter Hamill, Robert Fripp and Steve Hillage and Nick Turner all played with which British punk band? It's the Stranglers. I got this. I sort of knew. I knew Robert Fripp had played, and I thought. So I looked this up, and I went onto Prog Archives, which is where you get all the facts. Prog Archives is an incredible website for prog facts, and I check out my facts there often. And somebody was arguing on the forum there that the Stranglers should be on Prog Archives because they are a prog rock band. You get Golden Brown with an odd time signature. You get the keyboards, this sort of classical flourishes through ever, and you get the musicians like Steve Hillage, Peter Hamill, Nick Turner, Robert Fripp turning up in their band. They could well be a prog band. Number 9, question number 9. This is a pretty easy one. On the cover of the Yes album, which band member had his leg in a cast? It is Tony Kaye. Tony Kaye that has played with David Bowie. You see how it's all sort of coming together? Question 10. The 2017 film Baby Drivers features which prog rock classic on its soundtrack? It is Hocus Pocus by Focus. And the brilliance of this scene is rather than just dropping the music to fit the scene, he cut this chase scene, which is like a shootout chase scene, he cuts it to the rhythms and dynamics of Hocus Pocus by Focus. It's an incredible moment. I have a video on here where I think it's called When Prog Goes to the Cinema, where I look at that and I talk about that in much more detail, but I will not. I will carry on. Question 11. Black Sabbath guitarist Tony Iommi spent 3 weeks as guitarist of the British progressive rock band Jethro Tull. Sorry, the British question. I just read it straight through. I'll do it again. Question, you're getting fed up, you just want to know the answers, don't you? Question 11, Black Sabbath guitarist Tony Iommi spent 3 weeks as the guitarist of which British progressive rock band? Answer, Jethro Tull. He was there for 3 when Mick Abrams left and before Martin Barr comes in. And I think when Jethro Tull appeared in that sort of, is it that Rock and Roll Circus, that Rolling Stones, well, I think it's that. But anyway, if you go on YouTube and search for Tony Iommi and Jethro Tull, you will see him there playing. He was only there for a few weeks, but he managed to put his little mark on Jethro Tull before going off to invent heavy metal. Number 12, question 12. Before joining Yes, Bill Bruford was a member of which British blues band, being fired after 3 gigs? And the answer is Savoy Brown. And I think he got fired because he kept playing these blues in 6/8 rather than doing with a sort of standard shuffle. He was only 20 years old. He didn't know better, did he? Question 13. Which controversial writer was the inspiration for the songs 2112 and Anthem by Rush? And it is the American thinker and writer Ayn Rand, who in her book The Fountainhead proposed a sort of libertarian philosophical view which is hated greatly by the left, and this affected the perception of Rush in many left-wing people's minds. You know, these type of people that cannot see how an artist could take aesthetic inspiration from somewhere and not necessarily believe fully in the political implications of what they're saying, but just use it as a sort of metaphor for the individual standing up against the state, which I would say was a pretty noble thing to explore on a record, which of course Rush do so great on 2112. Bit of politics for you. Right, question 14. The album L by Steve Hillage features which US prog rock band? And the answer is Utopia. Steve Hillage's, that's his second album. His first album is called Fish Rising, and that album was going to be the second album for another prog band that he was going to be a member of. So you get an additional question here, and this will set the wheat from the chaff. I've just decided on the spot. What was the name of that band? So Fish Rising was going to be the second album by a band that Steve Hillage was in. What was the name of that band? And I'm going to keep you to the end of the video. If you get 20 out of 20, then you can get the extra point, and then you can say, oh, you got 21 out of 20. How about that? And then you will be the undoubted winner of this. There's got to be a winner. Question 15. British snooker player Steve Davis is a member of which electronic prog trio? And it is the Utopia Strong. See, the answer was Utopia, then this answer's the Utopia Strong. I've just got their second album. It's absolutely incredible. I love it so much. I interviewed Carvis Tarabi, who's another member of that band, the other day, and I got the album. It's absolutely brilliant. It's what prog should be. Psychedelic, electronic stuff, and it's not Tangerine Dream. There's stuff in there that just takes it on. So I'm doing a shout out to Utopia Strong on here, and I really want to get Steve Davis on the channel. I want to talk to him about prog and snooker, because I love snooker. It's the only sport I really love is snooker. Question 16. Which groundbreaking female singer on Bill Bruford's album feels... I'll read that out properly. Which groundbreaking female singer featured on Bill Bruford's album Feels Good to Me? And it is the incredible Annette Peacock, who often gets labels as a jazz singer, but she's so much far beyond that. And Annette Peacock, go and have a search for this, it's quite incredible. She could well be the inventor of rap, which she did way before anybody else. Question 17. Which progressive rock band supported the Rolling Stones on their concert in Hyde Park, which took place on the 5th of July 1969? And the answer is probably, you've put King Crimson if you've got it right, but we also had the bands, the Third Ear Band playing on that bill, and Family. And if you put any of those down, then you know, you get a point. I think Alexis Corner was on there. There was a band called Screw. I can't remember who else was on there. There was that band that Pete Brown, you know, the poet that died last year that had written the lyrics for Cream. He had a band, and they were on that bill. I can't remember the name of the band, but they sacked him, so he didn't actually perform in his own band. He had Chris Spedding on guitar. So if you got the name of that band as well, then you can have a point. If you've got all of them, if you've got those three, I tell you what, if you've got King Crimson, Third Ear Band and Family, if you put all three of them down, which nobody will have done, you can have an extra point. So now you've got possibly getting 22 out of 20. Right, I'm making it impossible for anybody to get this 100% right. Question 18. The British actor David Hemmings narrated the story on which Rick Wakeman album? Pretty easy, it's the album Journey to the Centre of the Earth, which was recorded live. Question 19. The album Left Overture by Kansas yielded which hit single? And this really is the easiest one on the thing. It is Carry On Wayward Son. So if you got that one right, you get yourself a point. If that's the only one you got right, just, you know, keep it to yourself, I think, because you'll be shamed here. Question 20. The Nazi dagger which Keith Emerson stabbed his organ with was given to him by the roadie of his band, The Nice. Who was it? It was the great Lemmy Kilminster, bass player and singer with Hawkwind, and then founder member of one of the greatest bands in history, Motorhead. And he had an interest all his life in Nazi regalia and, what's it called? Militaria. Oh, I'm using the word militaria, brilliant. Yeah, he had an interest in Nazi militaria and would have iron crosses and all that sort of stuff. Back in the day where you could utilise something like Nazism aesthetically without actually being a Nazi. And he gave a Nazi dagger to Keith Emerson. This is rock history. So what I'm going to do now is just in case you just wandered off, I'm going to go through again. You can check your answers out. So the answer to question 1 was David Bowie. The answer to question 2 was Duffel Coat. The answer to question 3 was Simon Dupree and the Big Sound. The answer to question 4 was Nick Mason. The answer to question 5 was The Police. The answer to question 6 was Elton Dean. The answer to question 7 was Frank Zappa. The answer to question 8 was the Stranglers. The answer to question 9 was Tony Kaye. The answer to question 10 was Hocus Pocus by Focus. The answer to question 11 was Jethro Tull. The answer to question 12 was Savoy Brown. The answer to question 13 was Ayn Rand. The answer to question 14 was Utopia. The answer to question 15 was the Utopia Strong. The answer to question 16 was Anna Peacock. The answer to question 17 was King Crimson or Family or the Third Ear Band. If you've got all three, you give yourself an extra point. And the answer to question 18 was Journey to the Centre of the Earth. The answer to question 19 was Carry On the Wayward Son. And the answer to question 20 was Lemmy Kilminster. If you've got those right, then did you get the bonus question right? And that is Steve Hillige's first album, Fish Rising, was actually going to be the second album by a band that Steve Hillage was the guitarist of before he joined Gong. And the name of that band was Korn. Great album. We've got to the end of the video, so put your score down below. I'm not going to talk anymore. And if you like this and you want more of these, I'll do it because this was so easy compared to what I normally do. I just read out a list of questions and then read out the answers. It was so simple. Right, I am going to finish there. If you like this, like it. If you get loads of likes, I know people like it. If you want to see more of these quizzes, subscribe. I might do some of these quizzes over on my Patreon, but I might do them in real life. I'm going to might try this, you know, and actually have a little bit of a quiz night. I'm going to do that on the next Patreon video. So if you want to get involved in that, become a patron. The link's down below. And if you don't want to become a patron but want to support me financially, you can put some money in my PayPal tip jar. End of the video. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.